SA consumers reined in their purse strings over Black Friday 2023 due to a tough economy. That's according to the latest SABC data. Experts say the numbers point to one glaring revelation, that as the economy slumps, South Africans are no longer in a frenzy of Black Friday shopping. This is according to SABC's latest retail sales data analysis report. The report shows that retail sales continued a declining trend, falling by 0.9% year on year in November from a decline of 2.3% in the previous month. Some economists say this points to the fact that consumers are facing challenges because their everyday expenses are making it harder for them to have extra money to spend. They say the overall decrease in sales is widespread, with only 2 out of 7 categories of retail stores experiencing an increase in annual volumes. They explain that right now people are not spending much because of a few reasons like high prices, high interest rates and low confidence in the economy. To unpack this a bit more further, we're now joined by Nader, Senior Portfolio Manager at Benguela Global Fund Managers, and he joins us via our video link. Grant, thank you so much for joining us this evening. One would ask that, when you look at... good evening. When you look at the statistics coming out from Stats SA, would you say that consumers really don't care about Black Friday, or they simply do not have that extra money?
Yes, I think they definitely do care about Black Friday. And in some respects, they possibly care more than they have in the past. But what their habits have become during Black Friday is telling the real story. And as you said, so they are really a consumer under pressure, a consumer that is under strain. And so their Black Friday shopping habits have actually changed. It looks like people are diverting more of their cash into the necessities rather than the luxuries or the nice to haves of the past Black Fridays. And that's a sign of a stressed consumer using Black Friday for different acquisitions than they have in the past. That's what I'm reading into it.
And, when you look at these figures, it clearly shows, what you're alluding to, and the fact that, economic activity is difficult when you don't have that extra bit of cash in your pocket. And when faced with a struggling economy like ours as well, I mean, we have high interest rates in this country, there's high inflation. So clearly, it's really difficult for some consumers to just squeeze, that last bit of money and to try and spend that for leisure.
Yeah, absolutely. If you just take a step back and you look at the bigger picture, over the last year, we had inflation in many categories was in double digits. We had interest rates that went up nearly 5%. Cost of transport went up materially. And for most people, their incomes went up by less than these numbers. So what that really means is their available money to spend on items that they would like to have rather than items they have to have, it's just got so much smaller. So now they're forced to make much tougher choices in this tough environment. And so it's forced them into buying necessities on special rather than the electronics, the TV, or the AirPods or something nice like that to have. And really the question also becomes, looking out, do things look a bit better or not? Are we in the same position over the next 12 months from now, or do we think things can improve? I think if we take a step back and we think about it, at the margin, I expect things can get better. We're unlikely to see further rate hikes. We are unlikely to see energy prices spike materially, barring some sort of geopolitical event. So that can happen, but people's inflation to wage ratio is starting to improve. So there are still increases coming through for wages, but at the inflationary side, that is starting to fall. So if you start to see wage increases at or above the inflation going forward, that means there's a little bit extra in the pocket for the consumer. And so maybe the outlook is not as gloomy as it was over this last year.
And when consumers are listening to you right now, many would ask, when can consumers expect, this reprieve in the economy, and when things are slightly a bit better so that they can have a bit more cash in their pockets? I mean, what would be the reasons behind us seeing things get better later on in the year?
So I think from a consumer point of view, sentiment really matters. When when they don't have confidence, when they're worried about the future, they're going to hold on to the savings they have, and they're going to spend what they're going to hold back on their spending. So that's the first thing to think about from a consumer mindset. But if just even things like interest rates, if they no longer go up, that's already an improvement because we've been through 18 months of rising rates. So we've had a lot of oncoming pressure. If we start to see inflation falling consistently, it has been falling, and if that continues, the potential for rate cuts actually is, it's being forecast for the middle of the year, around June, July. Most prognosticators are expecting rate cuts from there. We think there could be 75 basis points to 100 basis points in the year ahead by the end of the year in the cutting cycle. So that's a huge positive. Just even knowing it's coming is going to boost confidence. But when they start the first cuts, even if they're smaller than the hikes that we've seen in the past, that will be a positive. So there is reason to be hopeful. Remember also that load shedding was incredibly high last year. And if that is better, and so far it is a bit better than we have had, maybe the average is stage 2 rather than stage 3 and 4, that helps the consumers, that helps the retailers, because they can now stop spending so much on diesel and backup power, and they can spend a bit more on giving discounts to their consumers. So there is a number of ways in which things can improve, and I think we've got a very low base. We've had such a tough period that it doesn't take much to see a better period ahead. And that's actually what most people are expecting, is some level of improvement on most fronts.
And of course, we're living in a country where our economy has really struggled to create, job opportunities in the country. And if consumers are spending less, what does this mean for job creation in this country?
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. So consumer spending is a very important part of the economy. It's a big cog in the wheel. And as consumers spend less, the retailers are struggling to preserve margins. They're struggling for profitability, and they're diverting a lot of their profits into unnecessary expenses or unexpected expenses like load shedding related. And so they end up having to cut back on costs elsewhere. And that unfortunately usually means some job losses, or certainly less job hires or more temporary jobs. So that's not what we want to see. Having said that, we have seen a trend over this last year where employment has been increasing.
Yeah.
It's back to 2019 levels, more or less. So that is a positive, and perhaps some of that positive momentum will keep coming through despite the difficult environment. So we are hopeful that there's a little bit of job creation as things ease, but a lot of things need to go away. Another big uncertainty is the election. People are reluctant to make big decisions before an election. They're unlikely to hire a lot of people. They're unlikely to invest a lot of capital in a new business. So that sort of uncertainty is another thing that we probably need to get over, another hurdle we need to get past before we start seeing meaningful changes on some of the worries that we have around interest rates and the like.